In episode 3, Sally decides to take some advice from Mr. Kusno and start her own acting class, as he has been busy and she doesn't have much to do with her career not going too well and not wanting to really be with her parents. So she tries that and is a little nervous about it, not only because she doesn't at first know how to do what Mr. Kusno did for his class, but she's also worried about how many people are there, just because she's the woman yelling in the viral video. But thankfully most of the people at the class don't care as much, saying that it was justified enough that people get reasonably angry for stuff like that. So she does try her best to get some acting out of people and picks out one woman, and as she's being very hesitant, Sally's trying to get something out of her and starts doing what Mr. Kusno would have done and be kind of, I guess, passive-aggressive, and then start being berating towards her as to why she's actually there. And by the end of it, she does give a decent little performance, but everyone else kind of sees that as abusive. So after Sally comes back, taking a quick break, they're all gone except for the woman, who says that was probably the best someone's gotten out of her in terms of performance in a long time, and that she has a small part in a film and she needs to nail it, otherwise it's not going to be looking good for her. So Sally agrees to be her acting coach. Meanwhile, while Hank and Cristobal's sand business seems to be going well for the start of it, Hank decides to hire some Chechen hitmen to kill Barry in prison, because he came to the conclusion that they needed to take care of Barry, as Fuchs told him that he sold them out, or is going to sell them out. So they talk to some guy who says that he can hook him up with some hitman, who apparently, he says, run a podcast, which he reassures them won't go bad because no one will have known their faces, because they're podcasters. So there's that little bit of humor, as Cristobal and Hank are too sure, but it's probably the best they've got for now. Meanwhile, Mr. Kusno and his old sort of agent friend, used to be his agent but is now his agent again after he became popular, are taking a nice drive talking about things, when Kusno reveals that he did a interview with the Vanity Fair guy in the last episode, and it cuts out of the inside of the car, behind the car, and it crashes into a parked car, going back in, revealing that the agent intentionally crashed because he was like, are you out of your mind? Especially because Janet Moss's dad already talked to him about don't talk to the press and all this other stuff. So they make a plan to go to the Vanity Fair guy's house and steal, or at least destroy the hard drive with whatever info it's got on. And they break into the house, actually break in through the window. At least the agent does, because this is a whole crazy scenario. They're able to successfully do it, even though the Vanity Fair guy's wife is there, and she's like, oh hey, are you Kusno? And he's able to distract her from what's going on successfully enough. And it cuts from that to the Vanity Fair guy visiting Jim Moss, bringing up the interview. And he does not look too happy when he, knows Gene is somewhere behind this. And he's like, why don't we, take a little visit to my garage, a little talk. And after that, Gene shows up to Jim Moss's place, and they kind of give you a little, I guess, sort of visual intensifier by having Jim in his front lawn cleaning out the trunk of a car. And, he of course, mentions that he knows the truth. But apparently instead of, chewing him out like he kind of did in the last season, and what he probably did to the Vanity Fair guy, he has Gene's son Leo, take him to a house on a little house on a hill or whatever. I think it's the vacation home that Jane brought Janet to in the first season. I think so. But it apparently has barely any Wi-Fi, I think. But Gene's supposed to be there so he doesn't contact any press. And he's not too happy about it, but yeah, that's fine. He, mentions that he doesn't have a gun to Jim, being like, how am I supposed to protect myself from Barry? And Jim, says after Gene brings up that he only has a prop gun from Rip Torn, and he says, well, if it's a prop gun from Rip Torn, it probably is a real gun, which is a little funny. I don't know much about Rip Torn, but you know what? He seems like the kind of guy to have a real gun as a prop gun, especially before, Alec Baldwin. After that, it cuts back to the Vanity Fair guy's house as the, police start talking to him and his wife about the break-in, and it seems that not only does this guy look beaten up, but it seems that Jim Moss probably beat him up and told him to, pretend that this was all part of some mass break-in, and he was involved, or at least involved in being in the house and beat up at the time. And as he's being questioned, he barely speaks, and then when he does, he tries to seem, cool, nice, happy, and cool, but the more peculiar thing is that he's speaking German. And, when the police officer's like, does your husband speak German? His wife is like, tearfully saying no. And that's where the scene ends. Meanwhile, back in prison, Barry is being interviewed by some, I think, FBI guys, talking about the Chechens and the other, gangs and whatever, because, he's making this deal with them. And as they're talking, Barry notices that someone behind them is, acting very strange. He's sweating, he's bug-eyed and all that, and he points out, hey, that guy probably doesn't belong here. That guy's trying to kill me. And they turn around, they kind of are like, yeah, that's kind of weird, and then Barry again says, this guy's trying to kill me, and as soon as he says that, the guy pulls out what I think is supposed to be a gun pen. It's what it looked like. And when he tries to shoot him with it, it explodes and blows off his finger, and he just starts screaming. And then the barrel of a gun peeks out from the top of the roof. I mean, at the top of the ceiling in the room, because it's one of those drop ceilings, and starts shooting all of the FBI guys except for Barry. But Barry's able to grab a gun from one of the FBI guys and start shooting the guy in the ceiling and kills him, and just leaves the other guy screaming with his blown off digit. He escapes, and then the prison warden and a few other guys with him see the mess and are like, hey, where is Barry Berkman? This is not good. And that's where episode 3 ends. In episode 4, everyone in the prison is, kind of being crazy, like trying to look for Barry. And that's when, a little bit later, the prison warden and a couple of guards show up to Fuchs's cell asking where Barry is. But obviously, Fuchs probably wouldn't know, especially because he's all heartbroken over Barry, trying to sell them out to the FBI. But nonetheless, the prison warden and the guards start beating him up. And that's where the, title card comes in. And then we cut back to Sally's story as she is now becoming this woman's acting coach and going to the set of her movie that she's had a small part in, and she's trying to get her out of the trailer, like, come on, it's not that bad. And when she sees what costume she's in, it's like a very 1950s adventure movie style outfit where it's a little bit skimpy. And after she sees that and she walks on the set, she's kind of like, holy shit, at how weird it is. But then she finds out that the director of this film is apparently some, very talented director who worked on some probably very dramatic and just, I guess, A24 style film, probably. And I guess it's meant to commentate on very talented directors who worked on very unique projects, working on, I'm guessing, superhero movies is mostly what it's, poking fun at in that sense. But, they get to work on the scene, they start filming, and the woman seems to be doing decently well, but she kind of has stage fright near the end and tearfully leaves the set. But Sally, runs after her and tries to make sure she's okay, all that. But the director shows up and is like, hey, that was kind of good. Let's, try that again. Sally then tries to help her out, acting the scene out how she would do it, to kind of show her how. And she ends up actually doing a little better than her, like way better than her, to the point where, visually in the actual show she just blocks the woman, as we're like kind of viewing Sally from the director's point of view almost. And she's like, wow, that was incredible. Just do that. Like, exactly. And but just you, the woman. And the woman seems to do decently well. And the woman's previous, agent, or is still acting agent, is just kind of lounging around on set, telling Sally that, hey, you're good. After that, Sally is, talking to the woman outside nearby her trailer, and, she asks her, hey, are you okay? The woman's like, yeah, I'm fine, but are you okay? Revealing to her that Barry has escaped prison, and just as Sally hears that, a sound of a helicopter flying by can be heard, which is something that can be heard for the different perspectives of our characters throughout the episode. Kind of what I'm trying to say, symbolizing, the slight dread of Barry being out of prison and not in a very stable state, that's for sure. Going back to Hank and Cristobal, their sand business is doing even better as they finally have their sand, and they now have it in a silo, which they show off to their new associates and their guys that they hired. And for a little fun, they literally go into the silo, and the sand is at the level of the door that leads inside, but is up high via some stairs. So they start kind of playing on the sand, with it being tense enough for them to just be on top of it without sinking. And as Hank leaves, asking for Cristobal, everyone starts sinking into the sand, as if someone unloaded whatever valve you unload to get all the sand out. And Cristobal is kind of at the top. His head is out, and so is his arm, and he's yelling for help, but he starts sinking in. And when he wakes up, he's outside of the silo and being drenched in water. Hank reveals, as he's getting him back consciously, that he's the one who started emptying the sand and buried everyone, as he wanted to kind of get rid of them, but didn't realize that Cristobal was there, still with them. And the Chechens, show up. Apparently, Hank made a deal with them to, remain strong and take out competition, as they were seeing Hank as weak and wanted him to, quote, get rid of the foolishness or whatever. Meanwhile, at night, Mr. Cousineau is at this, house on the hill, very, paranoid and whatever. He was apparently taking a bit of a nap, or dozed off, and someone appears to be at the front door, which he's right across from, sitting down, and he is immediately scared, thinking it's Barry, so he quickly pulls out his gun and starts shooting. And it cuts to outside the porch, revealing that his son Leo was the one at the front door. It doesn't really look like he's dead, but he definitely got hit with the bullets and knocked down. It's with it looking like he was getting him food or whatever. Still at night, we see Jim Moss in his car outside of Sally's apartment, probably wanting to see if Barry is following her at any point. But as she gets inside, it doesn't seem like Barry had tailed her or anything, so he kind of looks like, oh man, oh well. And we cut to Sally in her apartment, and it's kind of dark in there, and she sort of notices that someone might be there and calls out for Barry, and he does show up, and she doesn't seem to scream or even be angry. She just seems like she's accepting it, which I'm not sure about, but I guess we'll find out later. At Hank and Cristobal's place, the Chechens, are talking to them, and it seems like they're mostly cool with Cristobal as long as he stays in line or whatever. So they leave, and Hank, tries to talk to Cristobal, who seems very shooken up, and he asks, how could you, kill those people? But Hank is, justifying it, saying that that's who he is, and that he was just trying to protect them. But Cristobal can't really take any of that, as he wanted to actually be legitimate when doing the sand business, but Hank considers that kind of foolish, and that there's no legitimate business with what they do. So Cristobal tries to leave, but Hank is trying to keep him with him, hugging him and all that, but Cristobal doesn't want to be touched at the moment, so he just pleads with him to leave him alone, and he does exit the house and close the door, and Hank sits down on the couch crying, sobbing, and after a while the door opens and a man comes in and says that he's sorry and that it had to be done, and it cuts outside, revealing in a faraway shot that Cristobal had been shot down by Chechens, so he wouldn't talk about their plans and all that. And that's where the episode ends. Okay, this was a couple doozies of episodes. Not in a bad way, obviously. These were crazy. Mostly the latter episode. There was some good bits of drama, some good laughs here and there, mostly with Cristobal and Hank, at least in the former episode. They did a good job yet again with the balance of drama and comedy. I'm actually tense during the dramatic scenes, and having some good chuckles with the comedy. That's how good the show can be. But man, the last episode took my breath away. I feel so terrible after they killed Cristobal. I did not expect that, honestly. But thinking about it now, it actually makes the most sense. This whole show, at least with this season, it seems that it's revealing almost all of the main characters are on some level, are selfish or just unstable people, except for Cristobal, and he's the one who got killed. So I guess they're kind of going for a bit of a Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones thing, where the more morally sound character is taken care of, while some of the more morally gray and morally evil people thrive. And that might seem bad for some people, but I think it's an interesting take with this show, the interesting turn. I'm interested in seeing how it really is going to end, where it's going. I guess that's all I have to say, really. I also forgot to mention before I just, leave it in the video where it is. The episode did actually instead end with another weird looking, or at least weird feeling hallucination or vision Barry has been having, multiple ones he's had for this season, where two boys are fighting in the desert, or at least some desert-like land, and one of the boys' fathers, breaks it up and is like, hey, back off now, and the other kid kind of storms off to his house, and he goes in his house, goes open the fridge, takes out a beer, and uses it to like cool his face, or at least make his face feel better. Clearly haven't been hit hard enough. And it shows his parents, and his parents are Barry and Sally. And Barry gets up and is like, I'll talk to him. And that's where it actually ends. So it seems that Barry is at least having some fantasy about him having an actual life with Sally, which is interesting enough, though it makes sense that he would have those fantasies because he's been kind of obsessed with Sally for a while now, to the point of him thinking that she still feels safe with him, even though it's probably not at all the case. But yeah, those were episodes 3 and 4. I wonder what you guys thought. I'm definitely taken away by all these, but in a good enough way. I'm gonna give episode 3 an 8 out of 10, and then I'm gonna give episode 4 a 9 out of 10. I'd say it did a lot of interesting things to blow me away to the point of giving it that rating. Well, I hope you enjoyed this interesting review for the latest episode of Barry. I hope you stay tuned for more, maybe even check out some of my other videos. And I will see you guys next time. Stay safe in there. Goodbye.